The judge gave my husband everything in the divorce. The house, the cars, even my beloved dog, Max. He stood there with his slick lawyer, a smirk hidden behind a tissue as he pretended to cry. He thought he had taken everything from me. He was wrong. He'd only taken the things I was willing to lose. Because 6 months later, as he and his new much younger wife cut the ribbon on their multi-million-dollar business venture, the police stormed in. And the look on his face when they read him his rights for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy was more satisfying than any alimony check could ever be. But before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and write in the comments where you're watching this video from. We love to know how far our stories travel. My name is Eleanor, and at 48, I learned that the person who vows to hold your hand through sickness and health is often the same person who will use that hand to push you over a cliff when you're no longer useful. This is not just a story about a divorce. This is a story about betrayal, about the quiet strength of a woman who was counted out, and about a revenge so perfectly crafted, it felt like justice. So, settle in. But before you do, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. It truly helps this channel grow, and I love bringing these stories to you. And don't forget to comment where you're joining us from, whether it's the sunny beaches of California, the bustling streets of New York, or a quiet town in the heartland. I read every single one. For 22 years, I was Eleanor Vance, the impeccably dressed, perfectly poised wife of Liam Vance, rising star of the San Francisco tech scene. Our life was a curated collection of beautiful things. A minimalist steel and glass house in Pacific Heights with a view of the Golden Gate Bridge that never got old. 2 luxury German cars that were always freshly detailed. Vacations in the Maldives, ski trips to Aspen, gallery openings, charity galas. I was the architect of that life. When I met Liam, he was a brilliant, awkward coder with big ideas and a threadbare blazer. I was working in marketing, with an eye for aesthetics and a knack for understanding what people wanted. I polished his rough edges. I taught him which wine to order, how to network, and what to wear to impress investors. I designed our first company brochure, named his startup Aura Systems, and even came up with the tagline, "Intuition Engineered." And it worked. Aura Systems exploded. It went from a 3-person operation in a dusty warehouse to a Silicon Valley unicorn valued at over $500 million. We were the golden couple, featured in Forbes and the Wall Street Journal. I quit my job to manage our brand, which meant being the flawless hostess, the supportive wife, the keeper of the perfect image. The cracks started so small I almost missed them. A new perfume on his collar he blamed on a flight attendant. Working later and later, his phone always face down on the table. A new, sleek passcode on his personal laptop. I was the queen of intuition, the woman who could read a room in a heartbeat, but when it came to my own husband, I willingly wore a blindfold. The day the blindfold was ripped off was a Tuesday. I was at a charity luncheon, my phone buzzing incessantly in my clutch. It was my friend, Sarah. "Ellie," she said, her voice tight. "You need to come home. Now." I found her on my doorstep, her face pale. She didn't say a word, just handed me her phone. On the screen was a gossip blog, and the headline screamed, "Aura Systems CEO Liam Vance's double life. Meet Sienna, his 25-year-old mistress and VP of Innovation." There was a photo. Liam, my Liam, with his arm around a stunning, much younger woman with cascading blonde hair and a laugh that looked practiced. They were coming out of a boutique hotel in Sausalito. The timestamp was from the previous afternoon, when he had told me he was in a high-level, closed-door investor meeting. The world tilted. The ground beneath my expensive heels felt like it was turning to quicksand. I stumbled into the house, my mind racing, connecting the dots I had so carefully ignored. The business trips. The team-building retreats. The sudden interest in yoga and spin classes with his dynamic new VP. He came home that night, his usual confident swagger slightly off-kilter. He found me in the living room, sitting in the dark, Sarah's phone still clutched in my hand. Ellie, he began, his voice a poor imitation of concern. Get out, I said, my voice eerily calm. Let me explain. Get out. I stood up, my entire body trembling with a fury so pure it felt cold. Or I will call the journalists who have been blowing up my phone all afternoon and give them a quote they'll never forget. He left. And that was the beginning of the end. The divorce proceedings were a masterclass in psychological warfare. Liam's lawyer, a shark named Victoria Thorne, was legendary for destroying spouses in high-net-worth divorces. They painted me as a gold digger who had contributed nothing to Aura's success, a socialite who spent Liam's money while he built an empire. They called my years of unpaid branding work hobbyist dabbling. They subpoenaed my personal spending, highlighting every designer handbag, every spa day, as evidence of my frivolity. My lawyer, a kind but outgunned man named Frank, advised me to settle. They have deeper pockets, Eleanor. They'll drag this out until you're bankrupt from legal fees. Liam played the part of the heartbroken, betrayed husband perfectly in court. He cried actual manufactured tears when he talked about our broken family, even though we never had children. He spoke of my emotional distance, my extravagant spending. He was a performer, and the judge was his audience. The final blow came when they went for Max, my sweet, goofy golden retriever, the one constant, pure source of joy in my life for the past 8 years. Liam, who had never so much as filled Max's water bowl, claimed he was the primary caregiver because the dog was registered under his name at the vet. It was a power play, a final, cruel twist of the knife to prove he could take anything he wanted. The judge, an older man who seemed to view a childless wife as redundant, awarded Liam everything. The house, the cars, the investments. And Max. He gave me a paltry, rehabilitative alimony for 2 years, a sum that wouldn't cover the rent of a one-bedroom apartment in the city we had called home. The day I had to say goodbye to Max in my lawyer's office was the lowest point of my life. I knelt on the cheap carpet, burying my face in his fur, sobbing as he licked my tears away. Liam's driver stood by the door, impassive. As they led Max away, he looked back at me, confused, his tail wagging hesitantly. A piece of my soul shattered and was carried out that door with him. I moved into a cramped, furnished apartment in a less desirable part of Oakland. The walls were thin, the carpet stained, and the view was of a brick wall. My world, once so expansive and bright, had shrunk to these 4 bleak rooms. The alimony payments were barely enough to live on, and my savings were rapidly depleting from the legal battle. I was adrift in a sea of anger and despair. For weeks, I barely got out of bed. I was a ghost of the woman I used to be. The polished, confident Eleanor Vance was gone, replaced by a hollowed-out shell filled with rage and grief. The turning point came on a rainy Thursday. I was scrolling through LinkedIn, a form of self-torture, when I saw it. A post from Liam. A glowing article announcing his engagement to Sienna. The caption read, "So grateful to have found my true partner in life and business. On to the next chapter. #blessed, #Aurasystems, #future. True partner." The words burned into my retinas. True partner. After 22 years. After I had built him, polished him, stood by him. I was just the rough draft. Sienna was the final copy. That's when the coldness settled over me. The grief didn't disappear, it just froze solid, becoming a core of ice-cold resolve in my chest. Crying was done. Mourning was over. It was time for war. Revenge is a dish best served cold, they say. But it's also a dish that requires meticulous preparation. I couldn't just burn his world down. I had to make him the architect of his own destruction. I had to use the very skills he had so publicly dismissed to orchestrate his downfall. My first move was to call the one person I knew I could trust, Sarah. She was a forensic accountant, a numbers wizard who had seen her own share of corporate deceit. "Sarah," I said, my voice steady for the first time in months, "I need your help. And I can't pay you. There was a pause on the other end. What do you need, Ellie? I need to find the cracks in his empire, the things he's hiding. She was silent for a moment. It's risky. He's powerful. He took Max, Sarah. That was all she needed to hear. I'm in. Our first breakthrough came from a place of sentimentality. Before the divorce, in our old life, Liam had been notoriously bad with passwords. He used variations of the same ones, often tied to personal memories. One of them was the name of his childhood dog, Buster, combined with the year he got his first computer. On a hunch, I tried logging into an old shared cloud storage account we had used for vacation photos years ago. The password was still Buster 1987. I was in. It was a digital time capsule. And buried among thousands of photos was a folder simply titled Tax. Inside weren't tax documents, but scanned copies of handwritten notes, meeting minutes, and what looked like early financial projections for Aura systems that didn't match the official records filed with the SEC. The numbers were inflated, the projected revenues wildly optimistic compared to the internal, more conservative estimates. It was a seed. Evidence that he might have been misleading investors from the very beginning. Sarah, using her skills, helped me follow the money. She discovered a series of shell companies registered in Delaware, with names eerily similar to Aura's legitimate vendors. Millions of dollars from Aura were being funneled to these companies for consulting fees and software licensing. The trail was complex, a labyrinth designed to confuse. But Sarah was a master navigator. Meanwhile, I began my own transformation. I dyed my hair a chestnut brown, traded my designer dresses for practical, forgettable clothes, and got a job as a part-time administrative assistant at a small, non-competing tech firm. It was a humbling experience, but it gave me access to two crucial things: an income and anonymity. I was a ghost, moving through the world unseen while I built my case. My target wasn't just Liam anymore. It was Sienna, the true partner. I started following her social media with the focus of a stalker. Her posts were a curated feed of luxury and success, private jets, designer shopping sprees, #girlboss inspirational quotes. But beneath the gloss, I saw something else, a deep, insatiable need for validation and a carelessness with information. She often posted from the Aura offices after hours, boasting about burning the midnight oil. In the background of one such post, taken in Liam's private office, I spotted a whiteboard. Using photo enhancement software, I zoomed in. It was covered in a complex flowchart, with code names and numbers. One branch was labeled Project Chimera, with a dollar amount that made my breath catch. It was connected to one of the shell companies Sarah had identified. She was arrogant. She thought she was untouchable. And that was her weakness. I created a fake online persona, Isabella Rossi, a freelance journalist for a European tech magazine. I built a convincing LinkedIn profile and a professional website. I reached out to Sienna, flattering her, asking for an interview about the women leading the next wave of Silicon Valley innovation. She bit. Eager for the positive press, she agreed to a series of informal chats. Over coffee and video calls, Isabella gently probed. I praised her vision, her dynamism. I asked soft, leading questions about the challenges of scaling a company so quickly, about investor pressure, about the creative accounting, sometimes necessary to keep the market happy. Sienna, thrilled to have an audience, began to boast. She talked about leveraging assets, about aggressive growth strategies, and once, after a few glasses of wine during a video call, she let slip a crucial piece of information. "You have to be smart," she said with a conspiratorial wink. "Liam is a genius at this. He set up these separate entities years ago. It's like a financial airbag. If Aura ever hits a wall, the core assets are protected. The investors, they get the crash. We get the airbag." My blood ran cold and then hot. She had just admitted on record I was recording every call, to a massive fraud. They were deliberately misleading investors, siphoning company funds into their own protected accounts. I had them. For the next several months, Sarah and I compiled our evidence. It was a digital dossier of deceit. The hidden files from the cloud, the financial trails leading to shell companies, the recorded conversations with Sienna, and the photos of the whiteboard. We had enough to bury them. But we needed to time it perfectly. We needed a stage. We got our chance. Aura Systems was launching its biggest project yet, AuraNet, a global IoT platform. The launch event was a black-tie gala at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. It was to be Liam and Sienna's coronation, their ultimate victory lap. The tech world's elite would all be there. The day of the gala, I put on a simple black dress, a far cry from the gowns of my past life, and applied my makeup with a steady hand. The ice in my chest was radiating a calm, focused energy. I looked at my reflection. I wasn't the broken woman from the Oakland apartment. I was an avenger. I didn't have an invitation, but I knew the security team. I had hired the head of security myself, back when I was Mrs. Vance. I called him. Jerome, it's Eleanor Vance. A long silence. Mrs. Vance, I'm so sorry about everything. Thank you, Jerome. I need a favor. I need to get into the gala tonight. Unseen. He hesitated. Mr. Vance has a strict list. Jerome, I said, my voice soft but firm. He took my dog. He sighed. Use the service entrance on Minna Street. I'll be there at 7:30. The gala was a spectacle of opulence. Crystal chandeliers glittered, champagne flowed, and the who's who of Silicon Valley mingled under massive screens displaying the AuraNet logo. I stood in the shadows of a balcony, watching Liam and Sienna work the room. They were radiant, the picture of success. He looked older, I thought, the stress of his double life etching lines around his eyes that his expensive lifestyle couldn't erase. The climax of the evening arrived. Liam and Sienna took the stage, hand in hand, to a thunderous applause. The lights dimmed, and a slick promotional video for AuraNet began to play. This, Liam announced, his voice booming through the speakers, is more than a product. It's a legacy. It's the culmination of years of hard work, integrity, and a belief in a better future. That was my cue. From the balcony, I gave a slight nod. Sarah, stationed at a computer in a van outside, executed the final phase of our plan. The giant screens flickered. The AuraNet video cut out. For a second, there was darkness, then the screens lit up again. But instead of the promo, they displayed a single, simple slide. Aura Systems. The truth. Then, one by one, our evidence began to display. The scanned notes showing inflated projections. The financial charts tracing money to the shell companies. A clip from my recorded call with Sienna, her voice clear as a bell. A financial airbag. The investors. They get the crash. We get the airbag. The room erupted in chaos. Gasps, shouts, the sound of hundreds of phones being raised to record the spectacle. On stage, Liam's face was a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. Sienna was frantically trying to shield her face from the cameras, her composure utterly shattered. And then, the real show began. The main doors to the gala swung open. 4 FBI agents, along with several SEC officials, marched into the room, their footsteps echoing in the sudden hush. They walked purposefully towards the stage. I made my way down from the balcony, moving through the crowd like a shark through water. I reached the front just as the agents ascended the stage. Liam Vance? Sienna Miller? The lead agent said, his voice cutting through the din. You are under arrest for wire fraud, securities fraud, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. As the agent recited the Miranda rights, Liam's eyes scanned the horrified crowd. They landed on me. Our eyes met across the short distance. The smirk was gone. The arrogance was gone. All that was left was the hollow, terrified man I had seen underneath all those years ago. He saw the calm certainty in my eyes. He saw that I was not a victim, but the architect of this moment. Understanding dawned on his face, a slow, dreadful realization. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply held his gaze, letting him see the complete and utter ruin of everything he had built on a foundation of lies. I let him see the woman he had underestimated. As they handcuffed him and led him away, he stumbled, his head turning back towards me. "Eleanor," he choked out. I said nothing. I just watched. The next day, the news was everywhere. The fall of the Golden Boy. The scandal rocked Silicon Valley. Aura's stock plummeted, and the company was placed under federal investigation. My work, however, wasn't quite done. The very same day, with the help of a new, much sharper lawyer, I filed a motion to vacate the divorce settlement, citing fraud and the newly discovered hidden assets. The judge, presented with the FBI's evidence, quickly granted it, restoring to me my fair share of the Marshall estate, including the Pacific Heights house. But the sweetest victory came a week later. I pulled up to my old house, my house, in a modest sedan. The police were there, overseeing the removal of Sienna's belongings. She had already been released on bail but was facing her own mountain of legal trouble. I walked up the familiar path, my keys in hand. And there, in the doorway, being held by a police officer, was Max. He was a little older, a little grayer around the muzzle. He looked at me, his head cocked. I knelt down. "Max," I whispered, my voice breaking for the first time. "Come here, boy." He sniffed the air, and then a familiar, joyful recognition lit up his eyes. He let out a happy bark and bounded into my arms, knocking me over onto the grass, covering my face in slobbery, wonderful kisses. I held him, sobbing into his fur, the last broken piece of my heart finally sliding back into place. I was home. Sometimes, the quietest people are the ones you need to fear the most. Because while the loud ones are making noise, the quiet ones are observing, learning, and planning. Never underestimate the power of a woman who has been pushed to the edge and has nothing left to lose. Did you like Eleanor's story of quiet vengeance? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What was the most satisfying moment for you? Was it the expose at the gala, or was it when she was finally reunited with Max? And don't forget to tell me which city you're watching from. I love seeing our community stretch from coast to coast. If you enjoyed this story and want to help me keep creating these gripping tales of justice and revenge, please consider supporting the channel by sending a super thanks. It makes a huge difference and allows me to dedicate more time to bringing you these narratives. Thank you so much for your incredible support and for being part of this storytelling journey. I'm looking forward to reading all your comments. On the screen now, you'll see 2 other life stories I highly recommend if you enjoyed this one. There are so many more tales of resilience and retribution on my channel, so don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story. Until next time, with love and respect.